Good morning. My name is Tom Sneeringer. I'm representing the Committee to Support U.S. Trade Laws, a co-sponsor of the conference, so let me add our welcome. The information about the committee is in the conference materials, so we urge you to take a look at that, and if you want to join us, there's no charge. I'm going to publicly thank Secretary Clinton for recognizing the importance of what we're doing here today by honoring us by asking Senator Chris Coons of Delaware to represent her. It's something that we take seriously, and I'm glad she does too. My introduction to Senator Coons is going to be unjustly abbreviated, but if you look in your conference materials, you'll find a full description of his qualifications as a champion of American manufacturing. Since his election to the Senate in 2010, Senator Coons has made manufacturing a top legislative priority. He co-founded the bipartisan Senate Competitiveness Caucus and co-chairs the Manufacturing Jobs for America initiative, two efforts that have attracted participation from dozens of senators on both sides. Senator Coons has championed a number of pro-manufacturing bills that President Obama has signed into law, including a permanent extension of the R&D tax credit and the Defend Trade Secrets Act, which creates new federal protections for intellectual property. Before entering government, Senator Coons spent 8 years working for an advanced materials manufacturer in Delaware. Please help me welcome the junior senator from Delaware, the Honorable Chris Coons.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you for that kind introduction and for helping organize today's forum. It's great to come in the back of the room and hear Rob Atkinson, upon whose advice I often rely, laying out in great and thorough detail just how tough the circumstances are going forward for American manufacturing. Every morning when I take the train down to Washington from my home in Wilmington, Delaware, I pass by a site that in my first few years haunted me and in recent years has challenged and inspired me. It's the site of the former Chrysler plant in Newark, Delaware. This was a massive automobile manufacturing plant that for decades turned out Durangos, had fantastic labor management relationships. And when I was first running for county office 16 years ago, one of the must-stop places to campaign in Delaware was at the plant gates at shift change, as literally thousands, about 5,000 men and women would pour in or pour out of those gates. And for decades, this plant provided high-quality manufacturing, great jobs that helped build the middle class of the community in which I grew up. And today, it's gone. It's empty. The site is leveled. And so that, to me, is a challenge every single day as I come to Washington, to be focused on manufacturing, on the challenges we face, and on what the future could look like together. The fact that that plant is gone is a reflection of the tremendous global winds that have tore through America's manufacturing base over recent decades. But the new businesses that are sprouting up on that site give me some real hope. Despite the deeply unsettling transformations in manufacturing in the United States over the last 30 years, there are some very encouraging signs, and things have not completely gone wrong with this most important sector in the American economy. It is still 12% of our GDP. Manufacturers can still rely upon very well-trained, well-skilled workers, a great infrastructure, and manufacturing is, more than any other sector, the bedrock of the American middle class. And in this election season, we have heard a great deal of negativity about the United States. Some candidates speak about how our best days are behind us and we are no longer great, and that we can't compete in a global economy, that we're weak and being taken advantage of. But as my friend and fellow Delawarean Joe Biden says, the people saying these things often don't have a clue about what's happening in our middle class, and they don't have a clue about manufacturing in America. And I'll give you 5 reasons now why, as Joe says, it's never a good idea to bet against the United States. First, manufacturing is coming back. Under President Obama's leadership, we've added back more than 900,000 manufacturing jobs since February of 2010. Manufacturing still supports more than 25,000 jobs in my small home state of Delaware and more than 12 million jobs across the country. It provides most of U.S. exports and 3/4 of all private investment in research and development. Companies like GM, GE, Caterpillar, and Whirlpool are actually moving production facilities back to the United States from countries like Mexico and China, part of a larger trend of onshoring about which you'll hear more this afternoon. That doesn't mean the economy is working well for everyone, and it certainly casts doubt on the notion that America's best days as a manufacturer are behind us. And that leads me to a second reason why I'm optimistic about manufacturing. Just look at the things that our manufacturers are building these days. I make a regular habit of visiting manufacturers, large and small, up and down my state, and urge my colleagues in the Senate to do the same. Take a look at M. Davis & Sons, a woman-owned industrial construction company in Wilmington, Delaware. They design and build some of the most sophisticated and advanced manufacturing process equipment that allows pharmaceutical and chemical companies to conduct some of their most complex operations all around our country. Look at Miller Metal, a small metal fabricating shop in Bridgeville, Delaware, which went head-to-head with a Malaysian company to make a very simple metal part. Large volume, large production, small metal part. Exactly the sort of business that is supposed to be dead and gone in the United States. And Miller Metal won, producing a higher quality, lower priced, more on-time product. Look at the GE factory in Newark, Delaware, where I grew up, where employees are building cutting-edge composite materials that make it cheaper and more efficient to fly. There are similar stories in communities large and small all over our country. U.S. manufacturers have an unparalleled record of invention and innovation. And contrary to what Mr. Trump says, that's not going to change anytime soon. Because, and this is my third reason, we still have the best schools, the brightest minds, and the most productive workforce in the world, working relentlessly to build the American brand as the most sought after on the globe. The fourth reason I'm optimistic is something briefly referenced in the introduction, but which you just don't hear enough in Washington, which is that at least when it comes to American manufacturing, Congress has been getting good things done. The first bill I ever introduced in the Senate 6 years ago was to make permanent the R&D tax credit, which is enormously important to the manufacturing sector. And a version of that bill has now become law, bipartisan, bicameral, signed into law by the President. The Defend Trade Secrets Act, which creates a federal private right of action for intellectual property, passed the Senate unanimously, signed into law, helps protect trade secrets, which is a critical piece of IP in the manufacturing sector. And a critical and long-needed update to the Toxic Substances Control Act, which streamlines regulatory burdens for the chemical manufacturing industry while making consumers safer and more confident when they purchase products. Decades overdue, another bipartisan reform win. And a bill that I've been championing, manufacturing universities, as a proposal that encourages universities to focus their engineering programs on advanced manufacturing. And that is making real progress. It has passed the Senate this summer, and I believe it is close to making it to the President's desk. These are 4 real wins for manufacturing, even in this partisan and deeply divided Congress. And to me, they're all genuine reasons for optimism, that it's possible for us to, working together, do great policy on the part of American manufacturing. But the fifth and most important reason why I'm optimistic is that our next president understands manufacturing. Given the importance of manufacturing to our economy, I am consistently surprised by how many of my colleagues really don't know what modern manufacturing means, what its needs and challenges are, and what its prospects are. Many haven't even visited modern manufacturing companies in their home states. Not Hillary Clinton. She gets it. As senator from New York State, she worked tirelessly on behalf of manufacturers, large and small and from all across her state, visiting them, learning about them, fighting for them in Congress. She co-founded the bipartisan Senate Manufacturing Caucus. She even testified against steel dumping practices of some of our foreign competitors in front of the International Trade Commission. How many senators go testify at the ITC or even know what it is? Plus, not only does she care, she knows how Congress works and how to get things done. She knows that sustaining today's manufacturing resurgence in the United States will take someone who can take good policy and good ideas and turn them into law. Just ask the senators who served with her in Congress about her determination to find common ground with Republicans when she served, even with Senator Sessions, from whom you'll hear later on today. So if there was ever a presidential candidate with the experience, the passion, and the understanding to make real progress on manufacturing from day one, it's Secretary Hillary Clinton. But let's talk now, if we can, about our agenda. Looking ahead to the first 100 days of the next 4 years, what will this manufacturing renaissance mean in the United States, and what are the policy initiatives we have to take to secure this most important piece of our middle-class future? First, it means making sure that our workforce has the skills to compete for 21st century manufacturing jobs. We've seen more open, unfilled manufacturing jobs in the United States this year than at any time in the last 15 years. but employers who come to my job fairs that I host up and down my state over and over say they are struggling to find workers with the skills to fill them because our job training and education programs have not evolved as quickly as our economy has, particularly in the manufacturing sector. If U.S. businesses want to compete in this newly knowledge-driven manufacturing economy, we cannot have a workforce trained for the jobs of the old resource-driven economy. As Secretary Clinton says, we've got to incentivize companies to treat workers like the vital and critical assets they are, not as costs to be cut. That's why she'll put in place incentives for businesses to invest in high-quality apprenticeship and workforce training programs, including a $1,500 tax credit for apprentices hired through apprenticeship programs. Sustaining a manufacturing resurgence means strengthening the U.S. manufacturing base, improving access to capital for small manufacturers, and supporting American exports through a fully functioning Export-Import Bank. It means making the United States the premier global destination for investment by reforming our Byzantine tax code, streamlining regulations, discouraging short-termism in corporate suites, and expanding the number of visas for foreign-born entrepreneurs so we can attract more inventors and educators and high-skilled workers from around the world. It means setting a high bar for trade agreements by enforcing the deals already on the books and scrutinizing new deals to make sure they promote American jobs, raise wages, and advance our national security. And it means changing the image of manufacturing so that students understand that today's manufacturing site is quite different from their father's or grandfather's factory floor. It today involves engineering and entrepreneurship, teamwork, problem solving, and programming. It means providing stronger and sustained federal support for research and innovation in the U.S. by doubling support for the Vital Manufacturing Extension Partnership, a tremendous program that in Delaware contributes to the success of manufacturers large and small. Remember the story of Miller Metal from Bridgeville? They went head-to-head with a Malaysian company and won because the federal MEP played a key role in helping them with value stream mapping, inventory control, capital investment, and helped them be globally competitive. The MEP is a key piece, I think, of a successful strategy going forward. So, too, is building on the success of President Obama's National Network for Manufacturing Innovation, now known as Manufacturing USA. The MEP is a great example of how public-private partnerships in manufacturing really should work. A modest federal investment, leveraged with private dollars, combined with cutting-edge expertise from business leaders, allows small manufacturers to improve and expand operations. I don't know of a single federal program with a higher ROI for American taxpayers than the MEP. When it comes to strengthening American manufacturing, it's clear to me governments can't solve everything, but we have a critical role to play in bringing together the people who can. In Delaware today, advanced manufacturers like M. Davis and Miller Metal are developing and manufacturing new materials and equipment that will change the way we live. The relentless work ethic that goes into building these companies is all on them, but the federally funded research, a more efficient regulatory framework, a well-trained workforce on which these companies will depend, that's where good public policy comes in. As you heard in the introduction, before I first ran for office, I spent 8 years at W.L. Gore & Associates, an advanced materials manufacturer in Delaware. My colleagues and I spent none of our time talking about partisan politics. We talked about continuous improvement, we talked about integrating supply chains, we talked about competing globally and locally. And throughout the company, I saw tremendous people coming together in pursuit of new inventions, new ideas. I saw management that worked hard to attract and retain the best associates, the best workforce possible, and we all worked to build a positive future together. In April, Secretary Clinton traveled to the Munster Steel Plant in Indiana, and there she reminded the crowd, and I quote, "We have in our country millions of people who get up every single day and go to work building America." That day she was talking about hardworking Indianans at Munster Steel, but she could just as easily have been describing why she's in this race. Because she wants to continue to spend every day working to build America, an America that's even stronger, even fairer, and even more competitive around the world than it's been before. In this election, Hillary Clinton is the only candidate working to pursue new ideas, new innovations, and new investments in American workers. She's the only candidate who knows that an economy built on inventing and making things makes us stronger and safer at home and abroad. And Hillary Clinton is the only candidate who actually believes that for American manufacturers, for the hardworking people of Delaware, Indiana, and states all over this country. Our best days are yet to come. So when I take the train to Washington or go home and go past that site of the former Chrysler plant in Newark, Delaware, I don't see an inevitably bygone era. I see enormous potential. And as I now see a dozen startup companies growing on that same site, employing hundreds of Delawareans in new manufacturing businesses with room to grow, I see the sort of opportunity we have together going forward. When you combine that potential with Hillary Clinton's perseverance, intellect, policy management skills, we will see amazing progress in Newark, Delaware, and communities all over our country. Thank you, and thank you for a chance to be with you today.